July 4th, I was born. And I came into the world, a bunch of fireworks and glam, to a beautiful mother and father. And that was in Tallahassee, Florida. And lived in Florida for about 11 years. And then we left, went to Texas for, I think it was a total maybe 6 or 7 years. And then for my senior year in high school, we transferred went to Colorado, and I transferred to Sierra High School. And I graduated, and after that, I think about maybe a couple months of my graduation, went to the military, and spent about 12 years as a hospital corpsman in the United States Navy. And then after that, it's kind of where this story picks up, is as I was leaving, the military, we went back to Colorado. And it is really where the story picks up. So it was January, I think 21st, 22nd, somewhere around that timeline. We're coming back from a birthday party. One of Eva's cousins. We were at a birthday party, some type of like roller rink. And we got back, and we just kind of, after the whole shindig, we kind of want to relax and chill out. And we suggested, maybe, smoke a little bit of marijuana, especially since we're out the military now. Why not try this magic substance as everybody's talking about? And one thing that's like kind of prevalent, like in the military, is everybody wanting to get out and experience marijuana. It's a little bit, the culture around it, safer than alcohol, especially being sailors, And so we're like, okay, we kind of want to transition towards that. So on our way back, we went to a marijuana shop. I think it's local in the state of Colorado. It's like Native Roots.
I went in and I asked them if I could get some weed that will help us chill out. I wasn't very familiar with the different kinds of weed. When I was younger, weed was just weed. And so, as an adult, we're out of the Navy and we just moved back to Colorado where our family is. And I went into the shop and I asked, I just want something to let us chill out. And they said indica was going to be the strain, I think is how it goes. They said indica would be the move. And so I said, okay. And I bought some.
And we came back home and we sparked up. And I don't have a huge background in marijuana. Tried it a couple times when I was younger, but it just, I don't know, I didn't feel it just like it I didn't see the real hype. But, especially during the military, everybody's hyping up, oh, it's so great, It's better than beer, it's better than tequila. It's like, well, let's try this. The substance. So after we spark up, I think Eva, my fiance now, she smokes first, and we use a bong, and then I take a hit from the bong, and then the first 5 minutes, it was fine.
We weren't down there for more than like 5 minutes or so, and we came upstairs, and our stairs went right up to the kitchen, and he told me that he wasn't feeling well. And he gave me a weird look, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you're fine. And I thought he was joking with me. And it was for a good, 5 minutes, maybe 10, that he was trying to convince me that he wasn't okay. And of course, I had just took a hit of weed. So, I'm over here thinking he's just messing around with me.
But in that basement for 5 minutes, I was like, this is okay. I get it. I understand what people are talking about. This is so great. And then a voice, something in my head said, if this is hell, then I'm okay with it. This is fine. And then immediately switch. All of a sudden, I start to get very disoriented. And we're in this basement. It's an unfinished basement. And everything just started to feel like it had more of like a gravitas to it. It's just, I felt very, very weighted down. And slowly, I was realizing that I'm losing a sense of reality, that the barrier for our consciousness, I felt like the seams of it was starting to slip away. And my consciousness started to drift into the imagination. And for my imagination, for whatever reason, especially on marijuana, it was utterly dark, disturbing, and it brought up all of my past experiences to the forefront. And poor Eva, she had no idea, in the very beginning.
I thought he was joking, and he said, no, really, something's wrong. I don't feel well. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe he's greening out. Maybe the weed was too much for him. Maybe it was a little bit too big of a hit. And so I was like, okay, well, drink some water and we'll just wait it out.
This is after 5 minutes and I'm still in a basement and I'm having a serious, I feel my world starting to separate. And so as we walk up the stairs, it felt like each step felt I was losing more and more of my sense on reality. And as we come up the stairs of the basement, all hell broke loose. From then on, I kept falling into almost like a hypnotic, repetitive state. I would find, or Eva would find me doing circles in the kitchen or marching around, singing cadence.
And he started walking around, and I just was like, maybe he just was kind of, maybe he's just super high. And he was walking around, and then he started kind of marching in a way. And I thought that was really weird. And I was like, I couldn't take him seriously. I thought he was messing with me for a good while. And he was marching around, and then he started singing cadence that I haven't heard before. And I thought it was just kind of weird. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, are you all right? And it's like he doesn't hear me at all. Like, he's not even acknowledging me.
The longer the night went on, the further I really started to separate from reality, to the point I couldn't distinguish it. And what I felt, it was so dark and malevolent that I truly thought I was in hell, like the blackest pit of hell. I was reliving all my past experiences, but even the ones when I was on deployment. And as a a corpsman, you see all kinds of patients and grotesque things, and that was definitely on my the forefront of my mind, and I was seeing it in the dining room table or in the living room. It's just replaying these things, and it kept getting tougher.
It was just odd. I was like, he's never acted like this before. And then he started raising his voice, kind of speaking like he was being really stern with someone. And then he finally started answering questions. And I was like, are you all right? And he's like, no. And that shocked me because I don't know if this is cliche when people say this, but he's never even raised his voice at me. He's never hit me. He's never done anything bad. He's like a golden retriever. That's the way that I think of him, is like, or maybe a black lab. But he's just the sweetest. He always puts everyone first. He's very kind in the way that he speaks to people. So that was really weird. And I was like, okay, this is odd behavior. And then at one point he started crying almost. And I was like, what's going on? And he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, what are you sorry about? And he's like, I'm just so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then he would snap back and his eyes would be fixed. And then he would just start marching again around. And I was a little spooked, but I was, I had smoked too. So my judgment was not all there. And I just thought, okay, now we really just need to let him walk it out.
Nothing was working. It was at a point, I got in a car crash, like 2015 or something, and I was reliving it. I felt like my bones were popping out. I felt the steering wheel hit my chest. And I couldn't tell, what frame of reference, what time I was in, what space, what year is. I had zero frame of reference. And I don't know when this part occurred, how far I was in. And mind you, I only took one hit. It wasn't too big or, too small. But at one point, I realized that I don't know where I'm at. I don't know how long time it's been. I could have been, walking around my house for 2 minutes or 200 days. I had no frame of reference for these things. And it terrified me. And then once that happened, everything just started getting a lot darker.
I was letting him walk around, and then he started running into the wall, and he was kind of shoulder checking the wall every time he ran into it, and then was hitting the fridge, and then the stairs and the stair railing, and he was stomping, and Gracie, our dog, she was following him around, and she was just kind of following him, just kind of follow the leader. What are you doing? Why are you walking around in circles? Where are we going?
I was hearing whispers of, maybe people in the past, some new. And I didn't know who it was. And this whole time, I couldn't find Eva. The one anchor that I had, was running around, with it like a chicken with their head cut off, and I couldn't find her. And then there'd be some, brief moments that I'll be able to see her, and it's like, okay, and I would try to hold on to her and say, I'm terrified. I don't know what's happening. And then she would try and calm me down, and she would kind of fade away, almost like a ghost, you know? And I would just rinse and repeat.
So I called my friend and I said, I need you to get your husband on the phone, our other friend. And I'm like, I need you to get him on the phone and he needs to talk to him. He was deployed in Japan. And I was like, I don't care. Like, he needs to talk to somebody. And so we FaceTimed, and at that point, I was marching around with him, holding the phone while he was next to me. And we were just kind of marching in the same way that he was so that he could talk to our friend. And our friend was like, are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm not okay. And I was like, I don't know what to do, guys. And he was like, it's okay. Like, just try to have him sit and watch a movie or something. I was like, okay.
And we went on the living room sofa. We're watching a movie. I think it was Empress New Groove. And I was still like really like, freaking out. But a part of me remembered like, okay, this is the living room. Eva's right here. The TV's going. And at this time, we had 2 dogs. One Coda, Gracie, they're both pitties. And Coda had a kennel in the living room, and Gracie, she's outside the kennel and she's fine. And I remember looking at them. It's like, okay, I'm here. Like, I'm still in Colorado. And I don't know when this occurred. I just remember laying down on a sofa, and all of a sudden, the dogs get in a fight. And that also kind of snapped me back to reality. Our dogs getting in a fight. And I remember, I don't know how much true this is in the physical, jumping on top of one of my dogs, I think it was Coda, and trying to separate them. Because, from my perspective, he had his mouth along her, on her throat. And I was like, he's going to kill her. And so I tried to physically remove him. That didn't work. And then all of a sudden, the Empress New Groove wasn't the Empress New Groove anymore. It was something very nefarious. I almost want to say demonic. And it was like the TV was laughing at me. And then there was a choir of people laughing. And they're like, you're here. This is hell. Like, your dogs are going to die. Your girlfriend's going to die. And there's nothing you can do. And from that point, I remember like running around my house and hearing Eva screaming for help. But I was like running. I couldn't find her. And then when I ran around the house, I don't know how many times it was, I ran around there and I saw just Eva was gone. But there's these demons in my dining room and living room. And it frightened me. I was like, I'm really in hell. And I remember I tried to escape it.
He started walking around like the dining room table, and he was like being really like kind of hostile, and he was looking at me like really weird, like kind of like he didn't know why I was there. Kind of confused in a way, but also kind of angry. I remember he was walking And like he looked at me, and it's like the best way I could describe it is it's like what they have like in the movies or like in like interviews of like demonic possessions where they say like their face didn't look like their face. And Javonte's face did not look like his face. It was like it was morphed. It was a face I just have never seen from him before. It was like anger and like rage, but also like confusion and sadness. And I didn't know what to make of it.
I remember running upstairs, and I just kept hearing laughter and just cackling. And in one of our spare bedrooms, I felt like when I went in there, all of everything that I've done, horrible or even witnessed, it all rushed and hit me. And I replayed all of my worst experiences in that room again. But this time it was a choir of laughter, laughing at everything I did wrong or every mistake. And when I eventually left there, I ran into the bathroom and I seen a mirror, and I remember hitting it, grabbing a piece of glass that fell and tried to, slit my own throat. And then I look in the mirror and it's just me laughing at me, and there's nothing in my hand. And then I ran downstairs. But when I ran downstairs, it was like the darkness started to like come away, but it crept. It was still in like this like confined boundary. But something was different. I realized like I could smell. And as I said before, as a corpsman, we see a lot of grotesque stuff, and I'm very familiar with the smell of blood. And I just smell it. It's just a copper, just a very, like it's like blood. And then I look at the TV and they're like, you did it. There's nobody left. They're all dead. And I was like, what? And I'm sobbing. It's like, they're dead. You've killed them all. And I lost it. And I look in a corner and there's this creature almost from like H.P. Lovecraft. It was devouring something. And I could just hear it's like a gnashing of teeth and just bones and whining and crying. And they're like, this is like, you're next. And there's like the only way to escape it is like, the way out, the exit. And I felt something heavy like in my hand, and I realized I had a gun. I was like, what? It was like, yes, do what you've done to everybody else. And I was like, no, this isn't happening.
So I grab Coda and I grab Gracie, and I'm trying to pull them apart, and it's just not working. And I'm 5 foot. I'm like small, and you got this big Coda. He's a puppy, but he's a big boy. He's like almost 70 pounds almost. And then Gracie, she's 55 pounds, 60 pounds. And I'm like trying to pull them apart. And Javante, I don't even know how he got from the couch to marching around, but he was marching around. And I was like, babe, like, help me. I was screaming, and I've never dealt with dogs fighting before. And he was saying something, and I could not tell you what it was. The only thing I could think of was he was saying like a cadence, and he just started going faster and faster and faster in that same route, like through the living room, the entryway, the dining room, and the kitchen. And he kept going and going faster and faster. And he would like kind of glance at me, and then he'd like keep on marching. And then he'd glance at me, and then he'd keep on marching. And I was like, I need your help. And then he ran upstairs. And I was like, what is happening? Like, where did he go? And so I pulled open my back sliding door, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs. My dogs were still fighting in the dining room. I was screaming at the top of my lungs for someone to help me. It's 1:00 in the morning on a Saturday in this town where all the lights are out. And then I get back in, and I'm trying to pull them apart, and I'm like sobbing at this point. Because I'm like, this is it? Like, my dogs are killing each other. I don't know what to do. And then Javonte came back downstairs, and I said, what are you doing? Help me. And he jumped on one of the dogs, trying to pull them apart. And then he said, ow, really, really loud. And he jumped back up, and he looked at Gracie, and he pointed at her. And then he looked at me, and he said, that's a demon. And I was like, oh my gosh, he is so far gone. I had no idea where my phone was. And I was just like, he's so far gone. I don't know what to do at this point. And I'm like, please, babe, like, help me. I was like, Javante, help me. And he books it out the front door, opens the screen door, opens the big door, books it out the front door. And I'm like, okay, he's getting help. He's going to our neighbors. He's getting help. And I'm still screaming, like trying to ask for help, because my screen door behind me is wide open, and I'm trying to pull the dogs apart. And we have 2 cats. They ran in the basement, I think. And then he came back. But when he came back, he went back upstairs. And then I was getting so tired. It felt like it was forever. And then he came downstairs, and he was holding our 9mm that we had up in the room. And he was pointing it right at me. And I just remember I was like, what are you doing? And he didn't say anything. He had no facial expression. His face was utterly blank. It was like no affect, just flat. And he had it pointed, full arm extended. We were probably this far away. I'm still holding the dogs as they're like fighting. And his face is blank, and he has it pointed right at my face. And I said, please don't do this. And then his arm drops, and he shoots. And I couldn't hear anything. It was just that, high pitch, and I couldn't hear anything, and my dogs had stopped fighting. And then I like felt something warm, and I like looked down at my hand, and he had shot my wrist. I was holding my dogs like this, and the bullet went in through my wrist and then went out right here. And I looked at him, and his face was still blank, and blood was going everywhere on top of the blood that was already there from my dogs fighting. And I said, you shot me. And he didn't have any reaction. and his arm just went straight back up towards my face. And it was in that moment where I said, if I don't run, I'm going to die. And so in my t-shirt and underwear, no shoes, in January, I left my dogs and I ran right past him, and I saw my phone at the edge of the couch, and I grabbed it and I ran out the front door. Thankfully, the door was already open from when he had ran out previously. But while I was running, I just kept hearing shots. And I could hear him running after me, like stomping after me.
I start to walk around, my living room, dining room again. But this time, the darkness had cleared away and shown me a lot of a warp destruction of the house. And I just saw blood on myself as I had the gun. And I was like, when did I even have this? And that's when I saw the police lights. And I was like, well, how long have they been out here? And there's a part that was so weird. I don't even know how to explain it. But I just remember as I was walking around, I seen a picture of, Eva when she was younger, and I remember holding it and thinking to myself, that's the last time I was going to see her. And I was like, this really is hell. Or if it's a dream, the only ways out is for me to, end the dream or, kill myself. And so I remember hearing, there's a lot of commotion outside with the police officers. And then it's like, okay, if this is how it's supposed to go, it's okay. They're not real officers. All of this is an illusion. I'm probably still sitting on my couch and I just need to, wake up. There's no chance that I would, that this is real. I opened the door. As soon as I open it with my right hand, and my left hand is, with the gun, and I kind of open it, and as I open it, I just see these red dots on my chest. And I was like, here we go. And before I could do anything, my phone ringed. And so I shut the door, and I grabbed the phone, and I was like, who is this? And the voice that came through was like, are you okay? I was like, who is this? It's like, do you know where Eva's at? It's like, no. It's like, well, she's out the house and, you shot her. And I was like, there's no way, And then a part of me was yelling at her. And it took me a while to realize, that was her mom. And her mom was like, you need to surrender your weapon and surrender yourself to the police. And for whatever reason, I said, okay. It was the most clear voice I've heard through that whole experience. This is her, this is her mother, and I've just committed probably one of the most ultimate, tragedies I could do to somebody's child. And she reached out and she stopped me. She stopped me from not only potentially ending my life, but, the police officers as well, too.
I ran outside and I ran behind my car, and I ran to the neighbor who had like some sort of like park ranger car out front. And so I was like, I've seen them before, like maybe they can help me. And as I was running, I called 911, and I only made it like 2 houses down, and I was looking over my shoulder and I could not see him. And so I was like, he's somewhere and he's looking for me. And I had my arm up, and I rang their Ring doorbell, and they didn't let me in. Understandably, they had children that I ended up finding out they had children. So I could understand why they did not open the door. And then I look down and I just see like my fat from my thigh just like out. And at some point from when I ran from inside the house outside, a bullet grazed the inside of my left thigh. And it did not go through my thigh. It did not hit anything. It did not hit an artery. It just grazed my fat. It's about like that big. And my fat's just going out, and I'm looking down and I'm like, it's so bloody though. And I'm like, so I don't know if he hit anything. And so I'm on the phone with the police, and they come. They must have parked down the street or something, because then I just see 2 men walking towards me, and it's just, I was terrified. And I'm like, don't come near me. Like, I don't know who you are. Don't come near me. And they're like, we're here to help. And so anyways, they put the tourniquet on my thigh, and geez, that was painful. And then they said, you have to walk, and we have to walk down the street. And I remember being on the phone right before they arrived. I remember telling the operator, I said, we smoked weed. I think he's having PTSD. He shot me. I've been hit twice. I'm okay. But I'm almost positive he killed my dogs. And I don't know if he's alive. And once I finally got to the cop car, they put me in the back, and I just was begging them. I said, please, like, don't kill him. Like, just, like, he needs help. And I remember when they were taking me into the hospital, into the ER, the doctor asked me something, and they said, did he smoke weed? And I said, yes. And they looked at each other, and they said, cannabis induced psychosis. And I said, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, let's get you fixed up first. And so fast forward a little bit, did my x-rays, everything was fine. I just got a little bit of nerve damage from my wrist, and no bones were hit. I was extremely lucky. I remember they said it's a miracle that she's alive, and that the bullets hit me the way that they did. And then, after that, it kind of slowed down a little bit. And they said, well, we've seen cannabis-induced psychosis. And I said, what even is that? Is it just what it sounds like? And they said, yeah, it happens. Like, people will smoke weed, and they're just put into a psychotic state.
I surrendered the weapon. I walked outside, and they handcuffed me. But when I got out there, one of the officers looked like one of the guys I deployed with. And I was like, I'm still in hell. It was a trick. And then I thought they were loading me up in the back of like a LAV. And I was like, I'm in. How am I back in the desert? It was. And when I was still in that, like the back of, to this day, I don't even know what vehicle it was, but when I was in the back of there, I thought I was riding back to the range or something. And then they bring me to a police station and everything, like the darkness just kind of like slowly migrated away. And what I was left with was the weight of everything, but the hallucinations were still there. Even during my time, because I got processed at the county jail, I was still hallucinating. After I got processed, they sat me down with I don't know if it was a therapist, psychiatrist, but some type of behavioral professional, behavioral health professional. And they're like, "Do you know where you're at?" I remember this part, and I was like, I'm still in hell. Like I'm still here. Like what? Like why are you guys doing this to me? And she kept trying to tell me I'm not. You're okay. And I was like, no, you don't understand. And at the time, I was still seeing my dog, like in the jail with me, and I was terrified still. And so they put me to it's like one cell where, for people with suicidal ideations. And I remember that process. And I just kept asking for Eva. It's like, where is she? And at first, they're like, she's okay, And I didn't believe them. I refused to. I was like, you guys are tricking me. Like I'm still not down from whatever. Like from this high or whatever this is, because I didn't feel like in any way like sober in a non-altered mental state. And when they put me in that cell, I had a lot of auditory hallucinations. I was still hearing my dog. I thought he was licking my hand or barking. And I would turn and it'd be nobody there. And then I took the shortest sleep. Maybe it was like an hour, 2 hours. And when I woke up, I thought I saw Eva outside of the cell. And when I walk over there, there's nobody. And I was like, she's a ghost. She's gone. I've killed her. I really did. And I just, I cried and I crying and, I was so sorry. And, it felt like it was still, a layer of hell. And it's just, everybody's just in on this joke about me. And then came the, I don't know, administrative personnel, and they're like, you have a court date, or you're going to see the judge. And I was like, what? It just still didn't hit me. And then I seen her on the screen through the laptop, and I just broke down and I was crying. And I was like, yeah, I don't even know if this is real. I don't. It's like, you guys are going to trick me again and take her away. So far, everything's been give and go. I haven't had a break from this. And this is probably like it's coming close to 24 hours after I smoked. And I still was like, my reality was still shattered.
We both just live like this insane nightmare. But at least he's still alive and we can just go from here. And I just remember telling everybody, like, this is not him. Like, this is not who he is. You know, that's not the Javante that I know. And then I got a text message about a court, a virtual court, and so I was on there and I was sitting on my friend's couch and then the screen popped up and I saw Javonte and he was in a cell with, I almost said scrubs, with his attire. And he was immediately, he just looked like he had seen a ghost and he was reaching towards the camera and he was like reaching out, like he was like trying to like grab me. Like he was trying to like reach for me. And I just kept mouthing to him like, it's okay.
And then after that, the judge set my bond. They transferred me to the hospital. And even when I was being transferred, I'm like, this is just another layer. It's like, this is never going to stop. It was at one point when they were escorting me out, and it was this young police officer. And she was like, are you okay? She was like escorting me down the hallway, and you had to go through a door. She's like, it's okay. You know, you can walk through the door. And I was like, you guys are going to shoot me, you know? I said, you're just going to kill me, and I have to do this all over again. And I remember her saying, like, you're okay. Just, you know, in a very sweet voice. It was almost angelic at the time. I said, just, you know, just go with these officers and they'll take care of you. I was like, okay. It's like I'm already, like, in this hell. There's no way for me to escape. I might as well just toe the line. And then I get to the hospital. Even then, the boundary of the darkness is almost completely lifted, but it still creeped around. Even in my heart, it was still extremely, extremely heavy. I didn't believe anything anybody told me. And then not even 30 minutes later, when I was brought into that room, my mother walked in and she said hi. And it was like one of the things that broke the spell. And then my dad walked in. He said, it's okay, son. Eva's okay, and you're okay. And I broke down again crying, and I hugged him, and that was it. After that, you know, they briefed me and told me the entire reality of the situation. That when our two dogs were fighting, I went upstairs, grabbed my gun, and in the process, I shot Eva and both our dogs. One of our dogs, who's the youngest Coda, didn't make it. And Gracie, she was wounded, but she's still, you know, alive and well, sleeping on our couch right now. But the wildest part is I don't remember any of it. It took a while for me to process that part of it, because I hurt the person I loved most in this world. She didn't deserve any of it. Her family didn't deserve it. Our dog Coda, he didn't deserve it.
The vet said one of them they're both in critical condition, but one of them, we can do surgery, but we don't think one of them is going to make it. And that was Coda. And I said, okay. And I said, is it going to cost any money? And they said, this is how much it is. And I said, I want you to save them both. They said, if you do, this is how much it will be. And I said, I don't have that. I said, tell me the truth. Like, what do I need to choose? And they said Coda probably wouldn't make it even with surgery. So I said, okay. And I was still in the bed, the hospital bed, and I said, okay.
Went to a veteran treatment court, and initially they said I had a episode of PTSD, and that's what sparked everything. Was it's your PTSD, and that's kind of why you went off the rails. And I had to pump the brakes on that. It would, folks saying it, even my lawyer at the time, I was like, what I had was not PTSD. I can remember, those first 5 minutes, in the basement, and afterwards, it's like I remember, it's like, this is not PTSD. I've seen PTSD a lot. Not to say that it won't manifest in different ways for other people, but in this specific case, I can kind of make a correlation for marijuana and everything else that folded after. But my lawyer at the time said, state of Colorado is not going to buy, cannabis-induced psychosis. And I was looking at a attempted murder charge, and so just, go with the veteran treatment program. I mean, which is a great program, for veterans who are suffering with substance abuse. And so I took a plea deal and went to the program for substance abuse for marijuana. And mind you, I can count my hand how many times I smoked marijuana. It wasn't a lot, maybe 2-3 times total. But I went to that program under the the guise of substance abuse, and I'm grateful, blessed even to have those people in my life still till today. And but the more I kind of got into the program, the more I realized that CIP is not very uncommon, or is as uncommon as what the public would kind of perceive it as. And the judge was great, and my parole officer was fantastic, and they really worked with me, and I couldn't ask for a better representation for the legal system for them. And with the help of Eva, her mother, her sister, my brothers, my father, and my mother, and all of our families, and especially our friends, they were the most supporting people I've ever seen. And this is a time of where everybody should, turn their back. I wouldn't have, blamed them for it. From outside looking in, very unstable. He just, shot somebody, killed his dog, and I don't want to be around him, but that's all they did was, love and support me. And I can't, thank them enough for that, but especially Eva. And, after a couple days, after the whole event, I didn't think that it was possible for her to even look at me the same, to even want to conversate with somebody so disturbing, violent, and dangerous. But after a month of the event, because we had a no contact order, the first time I saw her and spoke to her, I said I was sorry. She said, I know. It's okay. I know it wasn't you. She said, I know it wasn't you. And it was like, I really need to hear that.
That had to be kind of awesome.
Yeah. And now we're engaged. So.
I remember when Gracie first saw him, and I was a little nervous, but he always asked about her every day. And we said, okay, we'll take her to the park and we'll let her see him. And based off of how she reacts is where I'm going to move forward. And if she doesn't want to see him, then that's it. Then I'm going to call it. And we won't be able to be together. But I knew that how she would react. And it was exactly what I thought. And she, as soon as she saw him, her tail just went wild and she just ran, almost took my arm off. She was on the leash and she just jumped on him and she just started licking him all over his face. And it was just like the best reunion. And yeah, gosh, it's like over 2 years later. We live together now, and he's formed a relationship with my mom and my sister. It's taken a lot of time. He's been very, very patient with them and, let them kind of take the lead on when they would be ready to accept him back in their lives. And yeah, we just got engaged a couple months ago, and that's kind of the story. It was kind of long, I'm sorry. But that's our story. And, we've had the opportunity to tell our story to other people. And we just want to keep doing it and just bring awareness to everything that could happen. And, just let people know, this can happen, and it's okay to not just go with what everyone's doing. Sometimes things are not as great as they seem. And also, if other people have experienced this, they're not alone.
I'm not saying that we didn't have our, rough patches. Even today, we'll have, I know, me, like a little PTSD episodes from that, and I have more PTSD from that than when I was deployed or my whole entire 12 years in the military from that one night. But our story doesn't stop here, and I hope that we can just keep moving forward, telling our story together and helping others, those who are either addicted, in a dark place, need somebody to talk to, or even, interviews to reference to see that they're not alone, but there's others who've, maybe gone through the similar circumstances they have, and that they are, that this isn't something that they can't deal with alone. or they don't have to. So, yeah.